Hello and welcome. I'm Prema, and I'm so glad that you're here. Today, I want to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart. Why success doesn't feel like success anymore and what we can do about it. So, maybe you've built success, you've followed the strategy, you've gotten the results, and on the outside, it all looks right. But inside, it's starting to feel off. Maybe it's felt off for quite a while, and maybe even kind of have a hollow feeling about the whole thing. Not because you're ungrateful or even that maybe you're burned out, but because the version of success that you've built no longer matches who you've become right here and right now. And in this episode, it's really your permission slip to name that truth. You're not broken, you're emerging, you're evolving, and it's time to get up to speed with yourself. I want to remind you that we do take live callers on the show. And the number is on your screen if you're watching live, and it's 1-866-451-1451. And if you have questions or comments or topics for me to cover, please send me an email at askprema@solutionary. That's SOUUL, solutionary.com. And the link for that is with the show. And one more, I want to remind you that if you haven't already taken the Sacred Wealth Code Archetype quiz, you can do that. There's a link with the show as well. Free quiz to get one of your Sacred Wealth Code archetypes. And you'll also get a little training on it and some ways that you can use it so that you can activate that archetype, which is holding some of your wealth and purpose gifts. All right, let's first dive into a couple of the current Vedic astrology trends, and then we'll dive more into our subject today. I will do an oracle card reading within our time before we end, and we will do a juicy process to help you to integrate the information that we move through and for you to get some soul wisdom, some soul guidance that comes up for you. I always want this to be super practical for you and for you to be able to walk away with something that's shifted, something that you can put in your pocket, pull back out, and use again, but you feel transformed from just being here. Mercury is transiting Aries starting on May 6th, and that's today, the recording date of this show. And it is so welcomed for it to be moving into Aries. In Vedic astrology, we use the sidereal zodiac. It has been in Pisces with the eclipses and a whole bunch of planets since February 23rd. And this is a long stay for Mercury to be in this placement where it's debilitated. It has been months of kind of feeling a bit foggy and maybe unclear, unfocused, even overwhelmed at time, depending on how this transit has hit your chart personally. But clarity is coming. Mercury is our great merchant, so it's super great for business. It's also our great communicator in the Sacred Wealth Code archetype system. And, words have power. Mercury, where it's been, has really encouraged us to lean into our intuition, which is wonderful. That's perfect. We want to be able to use our intuition, but we need our intellect as well. We need to be able to weigh information, have clear personal judgment on things, not about what's right and wrong for you, but what's right and wrong for ourselves personally, and to be able to connect the dots and think through things clearly. Mercury also translates into Buddha, and it's going to be with the sun for a week before the sun transits out of Aries. And this gives us what we call a Buddha Aditya Yoga. And it really means like this mental brilliance, this Buddha brilliance, and gives us this beautiful clarity. So if there are things that you aren't clear about yet, maybe some of what you are speaking about or writing about just hasn't felt like it's really hit its mark, that it's been totally on point. What I want you to open up to is it's been on point for the moment, for where you are, which has been we've all been in a lot of processing, a lot of transitioning. Mercury is actually most interested in the process of things. And we're emerging within this process. And the next emergence, as far as Mercury goes, is to be able to think and take action steps that are soul aligned with our clarity and with our soul goals, as I'd like to call them. So, this is going to give you a lot more clarity than you've had. You might be already feeling it coming. And I want to encourage you to let this clarity land over the next few days. And Aries is going to want to kick your feet into action. Just make sure you're doing that from a place where you feel aligned with your heart, aligned with your purpose, your mission. And yes, it's time to get things moving. Our next transit is Jupiter will be moving into Gemini in a week. So on the 14th of May, Jupiter is going to transition into Gemini. And really, the theme here is expression through communication and learning and networking. This is a transit that lasts for a whole year. It's very much the visionary, the teacher, the sage. And in this placement, first, I just want you to think back for a moment. And it'll be here, first of all, it'll be here from May 14th, 2025 till June 2nd, 2026. It'll have a short time that it spends in Cancer, but it'll retrograde back. And this is a transit that repeats itself. So the last time it was here was May 20th, 2013 to June 10th, 2014. So just take a moment and walk down memory lane and what was going on for you back in 2013. Like for me, I had a huge shift in my business in 2013, and this transit is Jupiter moving into my 10th house of career and business and recognition in the world. And like I said, I had a big transition in my business. I launched a new program at that time. I started speaking on other people's stages. There's a lot that went right along with this communication and expansion and also networking because of some other transits. So just have that reflection because history doesn't repeat itself, but as Mark Twain said, it often rhymes. And we can also look back at some of the challenges that we had during that time, some of what was working during that time, and how can we expand on what was working then to the times we're living in now. It's a theme, not the exact circumstance. And the challenges that we faced back then, what are some ways we could navigate those if we had potential challenges that were of the same flavor? What are some of the ways, knowing what we know now, wisdom, the sage, that we could bring that wisdom if we were to have those kind of challenges? So a great place to reflect on. You'll hear more about this. I'm going to actually teach a whole class on Jupiter. For business, this is ideal for launching, for educational programs, writing, speaking, engagements, and really to expand your message. And when it comes to expanding our message, and we did a whole episode on your evolving voice, our message is always expanding if we're always expanding. And that doesn't mean our message has to change all the time, but the energy we're bringing to it may shift and change because we're presently authentically coming to it, and who it's landing for, or even the meaning we put behind it, that we give it, can be expanding and shifting. And then your actual message may change as you emerge and get up to speed with yourself. So it's going to be even a more ideal time for teaching and podcasting and content strategy, collaborations, group teaching, evolving how you communicate. So, just curious, what is your favorite way to communicate? Is it through the spoken word, the written word? Do you like to be in this kind of format like I am right now in podcasting? Are you really like to get into those deep personal one-on-one conversations? Those are conversations I love as well. But just notice what that is and how that wants to evolve, and we'll bring some more energy to that. And the other transit I want to talk about is the full moon in Libra. In Vedic astrology, it's on May 12th. It is in Vishaka Nakshatra. And this is really a choice point. It's, do I keep walking the path of, what's potentially is working, or do I need to shift to what feels more real and alive for me? Vishaka translates to the star of clarity and divine purpose. and is not about endless options, but about clear alignment with your true soul path. Look, we're going to align again and again and again with our true soul path if we are choosing to walk the path of alignment, if we are up to speed with ourselves and present with ourselves. There'll always be this shift, this recalibration or calibration, like balance, for instance. And Libra is a place that represents balance. It's across the zodiac from Aries. Libra being relational, it's about commitments, agreements with others, and Aries is more of our like our personal sovereignty, our authenticity, and our independence, and also bold new beginnings. And you can think of balance. One of the images I like is thinking of a like a teeter-totter. Balance is actually constant unified movement, as I would describe it when I was teaching yoga, because it's not one static point. It's not holding something just statically there forever. There's those micro movements and sometimes those macro movements when we hit an extreme that it takes to actually be in balance and refined balance. So it's dynamic. It like always calls us back. Balance calls us back to attending to it. It's not just, okay, I've got balance. Let me just leave it over there now. We have to continue to make those micro movements. And we will continue to do that with our purpose. It doesn't mean that we're off. There's a refinement because we're evolving. So full moons bring the light of the moon, which represents our consciousness. It'll be the queen in the Sacred Wealth Code archetype system. And it brings our consciousness um, and lights the night. So we get to see into some of the places that maybe we didn't see before. So it's a great time to do clearing work. I always hold my full moon sacred healing circle on the full moon. And I want to invite you that if this full moon is stirring something within you and you're ready to stop performing a version of success that doesn't feel true, if you want to find a different equilibrium in your relationships, that starts with yourself and with others, please come and join me in the Full Moon Healing Circle. We'll work with the lunar energy and we'll release what no longer fits. And we'll do it with sound healing. We'll do it with mantra. We will do it with a journey and activation process that's unique to the work that I do and will really activate your soul's voice. So the link for that is in the show notes or wherever you're watching this. And I'd love to have you come join me. It's only $27 and I hold this every month. All right, let's jump into our main topic here and why success doesn't feel like success anymore and what we can do about it. It's important to have a definition of success for yourself. And that definition I find is most accurate when it's based on more of what feels like success than sort of a bullet pointed list of what success looks like. Because if we're just going by what success looks like, we're often going by somebody else's version of success, someone else's definition. And if that truly fits you, that's totally fine. But does it actually make you feel successful? And what has made us feel successful, last year, last month, 10 years ago, may not make us feel successful now. It's such a personal thing, the definition of success. So just take a moment and reflect on that. What does it feel like for you when you feel successful? And it's beyond a dollar amount or a certain level of recognition. You have to go deeper. Like, what does that actually feel like? We'll work that into our process that we're going to do a little bit later in our episode here. But maybe you followed a path and it wasn't fully yours. Maybe you thought it was yours at the time, and maybe it even was, but it doesn't feel like it is fully now. And maybe you've worked hard and you've achieved things and you followed the strategies. You've built the structure and possibly even exceeded your goals. Or maybe that structure didn't work for you and you didn't exceed your goals. But it was built, at least in part, from the expectations and frameworks of others, mentors, maybe industry standards, even past versions of who you are that needed safety or validation in some way. And this is fine. This is normal. Like all these strategies and frameworks, if they fit, great. If they've got like if it's like a beautiful new um, garment, and it feels wonderful, and there's plenty of room to move, but it fits just right, wonderful. But when it stops fitting, then we need to make something shift there. So sometimes I find that we're standing inside a version of success and it feels empty, or maybe even worse, it feels like it belongs to someone else. And this is not a crisis, it's really an awakening. I've been there, I've walked many of my clients through this place. In fact, I just was reflecting as I was preparing for this episode, and I had tuned in, and this is the topic that dropped in. And I was tuning in with myself around something that I'm going to execute in my business here very soon that came as very much of an aligned, okay, this is the next step for me. I'll be teaching a workshop, and you will get to know about that workshop, um, Soul over strategy, and I'll be teaching that, and you'll get a link to that and all of that here in the coming weeks. But as I was in a place yesterday when I was preparing for this, and I also had a lot of other things on my plate. There's a couple of trainings I'm creating for Sacred Wealth Mastery, and had some other to-dos and such, and all of a sudden I started to feel heavy with all of it. So I had to take myself out for a walk and take my business for a walk. It's one of the ways that I'm very kinesthetic, and it's the way I work through things. One of the ways I work through things. And I really had to look at, okay, what was I doing here, and did it actually fit? And why did it feel heavy to me? Because, this all came as great inspiration, but it started to feel heavy. I realized more because of the timing, not because of actually what I wanted to do. It wasn't that that didn't fit. That strategy was just fine. But the strategy of when to do it and how to sequence it, that particular strategy, that didn't fit for me. That was really making my energy feel heavy and just feel like a huge burden. So I leaned into divine timing, which is another principle that we're not necessarily focusing on so much today, but woven into everything I do. And that's why we talk about the energy, that I was negating for a moment my divine timing and what really my chart was bringing and the timing of it. And so when I rearranged the timing of things, I was able to let go of the timing strategy around something and come into a new level of timing strategy that felt like spacious, and I had lots of room to move. And then I could bring all of my energetic currency there. Because if you're trying to work a strategy that isn't enlivening to you, and you're just doing it because you think it's going to work, or it worked for someone else, then you're going to start to dial down your essence. You're going to dial down your gifts and your purpose and your energetic currency. And you're going to try to do it from a model of the left brain of trying to recreate something, as opposed to the juiciness, the aliveness, the passion that you have to really infuse in it. So there's lots of different ways that this shows up for us, but for me, it showed up heavy. There's times in my life when when it was time to realign, where it showed up, like empty, or like this deep ache, because misalignment often can be quiet. And the first signs that you get sometimes are really subtle. It can be, like less inspiration. So just think about this. Where in your work in the world, your soul work, your business, your project you're working on, hmm, are you feeling less inspiration or a dullness around the work in general? And you're just kind of going through the motions and maybe not wanting to show up like you used to. Like, this is your inner compass, and I'm pointing to my heart if you're not watching me, but this is your inner compass. Your heart is, where you connect with your soul wisdom, where you connect to the quantum, and it's trying to get your attention. Our our intuition, our inner compass is always speaking to us. And again, it doesn't mean you necessarily need to abort mission. It just means that maybe you've left a piece of you out, because misalignment doesn't always scream. Like I said, it whispers. And true prosperity requires an inner resonance. So if your business or your soul work, your project, and it starts to feel like performance, or again, you're going through the motions, you're not wrong for wanting something deeper. And we want to listen to that internal, sometimes it's a yearning. Sometimes it can be really subtle, where it's just that little tiny voice in the background that's like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. But what you are creating will be so much different and have such a different level of impact, including the prosperity it returns to you, if your full energetic currency is in it. And the more aligned you become internally, the more intolerant it is to, wear a mask, even if it's a successful one. And that's a place where we can really feel trapped, because all right, we've created something, we're making the money, but it just may not feel right. But what it's producing maybe really fits. It fits in a lot of ways. It pays the bills, it gives you a certain level of, of luxury or comfort, or able to invest in yourself in certain ways. But I promise you, when you allow yourself to get up to speed with yourself in what success now feels like for you, then in that getting up to speed with yourself, you will dial your energetic currency up, 10, 100-fold. Because again, remember, success isn't what you do, what you produce. It's how do you feel? What's it, what are those core feelings? Does it give you a sense of freedom? Does it give you a sense of purpose? Does it make you feel, excited and enthusiastic? Is this a deep level of fulfillment for you? Like, just start to really allow that to bubble up for you. I have known people who have had, a very simple job and have made a modest income, and then have a savings account that feels really just right for them, and they're able to do the things that they want to do and send their kids to college. And by someone else's standards, that might just seem sort of mediocre, but by their standards, that's like they are just so happy in their lives and what they're doing, and feel totally on purpose. And I have worked with millionaires and a billionaire that could feel very often and not successful, because maybe one of their companies or one of their investments was off. Again, it comes down to, it's deeper than that. If we're going to gauge our success on what's happening outside of us, and I'm not saying not to pay attention to that by any means, that's feedback. But when you can really, be into that feeling of how it feels for you, the other piece of that is, that's how we create going forward. That's not only your inner guidance system, but that is your energetic currency to actually consciously create. We'll do a whole episode on conscious creation. I have a module on conscious creation in Sacred Wealth Mastery. And it's important to really understand the principles, and I'll just give them to you basically. And that is that whatever it is that your heart really desires, how's that going to make you feel? How's it really going to make you feel? And can you embody that? Can you be that feeling? Can you embody that here and now before you see it in front of your eyes? Because by doing that, you're matching your frequency to it, and you're calling it in, because it already exists. Now, that was a super simplistic. It's way deeper than that, but that's the basics anyway. Again, we'll go into it at a different time, but I just wanted to let that land, because it's really an important principle, and I'm always coming back to that for myself. How do I want to feel? So, if you're not feeling fully aligned with your success, you're not broken. You're being called forward. You're not maybe burning out or losing interest because you're weak in some way. But it's more because you're still trying to sustain something and something your soul has outgrown. And different and sometimes what's shifting isn't just the structure of something, it's the part of you that's meant to lead next. And one of the clearest signs of soul alignment is when a gift you've kept quiet or used behind the scenes starts asking to come forward. So for me, back in 2022, this really happened for me. I mean, everything was fine in my business. The structures, everything was working, and clients were getting results, and I was enjoying it to a certain extent. But behind the scenes, I do a lot of healing work with my clients, on my one-on-one clients and in my groups. And I really that was just a sort of a behind the scenes. Like I didn't step forward with that at all. So I really just started to feel flat a little bit, but I was enlivened in all my work, but in that particular part of my work. And when I connected the dots that, oh, these gifts, these healing gifts that I have a moon in Shadabishak, and I do a lot of transformational work and create a lot of transformational processes for Sacred Wealth Mastery and for my clients. Well, this healing work wanted to be expressed more publicly. That part of me wanted to come out of the closet, not just be behind the scenes. Now, I have eighth house planets, and there's a part of me that's very private, and I do work behind the scenes in a lot of ways. But there's also a part of me that is here to make a big difference and be seen for that as well. So again, this is one of the places in my set of gifts and my soul wiring that I'm always working with. And it could feel like a push pull if I'm not honoring both. So it was one of those times. So as I realized what was going on and recalibrated around this and realigned, that's when I birthed the full moon sacred healing circles and started to do them on every full moon. I believe it was November of 2022 when I did my first one outside of my containers. And invited the public in, and then I made it a integral part of all of my offerings. And at that point, and I had a lot of people really come in and enjoy that work and still do, and I love that work. It's like it's a journey we go on. I channel the whole thing, and it's just um, a part of me that wants to emerge and evolve. And parts of us and our gifts want to evolve and need to evolve by experiencing ourselves and experiencing that gift. So I still teach the full moon healing circles. They're part of Sacred Wealth Mastery, and my private clients get those as well. And again, like I said earlier, the link is in the show notes for that. It's a very transformational journey, and I love them and I enjoy them. And I also do healing sessions as well. So these times happen it's not a breakdown energy, it's more of an emergence. And yes, sometimes we have to go break through breakdown before we break through. But there's a little bit of a difference here between something breaking down and it needs to fall away, or something's bubbling up and is emerging. And your work isn't, you know, it's not to force clarity right away when this is going on. We want to create space for that next part of you to land, to be seen, to be honored, and to inform you on how it wants to be expressed. So, what if the version of success you've built was meant to get you here? And maybe not to take you further, but it was meant to get you here. And you were just really allowing yourself to be grateful. Okay, I'm here. And I'm also ready for what's next. Just embracing that question. How would that free you up? Just tune into that. How would that free you up if you are just realizing this is another step in the journey of emergence, of you being all of who you are, and also giving that and giving those gifts to the world? How would you feel? So you can let that soak in for you. And if you're watching this or listening to this somewhere, you can leave a comment. I always would love to hear that. You can always feel free to email me those comments too at askprema@solutionary.com. And we're going to take this reflection into a couple of the Sacred Wealth Code archetypes. So the administrator is one of Saturn's archetypes. And the mantra is I walk with a foot in both worlds, both the spiritual and both the material. And one of the shadow sides here of the administrator is over responsibility or staying in systems or ways of doing things that no longer serve. The administrator often builds beautiful, stable systems. It's actually a leader, the administrator is, because it also knows how to delegate. But the challenge is knowing when those systems have become boxes, they become too rigid, and when the loyalty to the structure becomes a disloyalty to your soul. So here's a couple of things that you want to check in if the administrator and what the administrator holds is feeling resonant for you. And that is to check your systems. Are they serving your soul? Are they serving your evolution? Or simply maintaining the status quo? And with Saturn, the administrator, for the next 2.5 years being in Pisces, there's a lot of restructuring going around, and also restructuring that is very soul oriented because Pisces is a very spiritual sign. And we are going to be called to, and depending on how this is hitting you in your chart in particular, we're going to be called to some restructuring that allows us and our soul to breathe more. Also, this is a time to reconnect to the purpose behind the structure. What is the purpose? What is it serving? How is it serving? So maybe you have a certain way that you work with clients, a certain way that you process customers or products or whatever it might be. And if anything's feeling off, what is the purpose behind it? Purpose always pulls things forward. Purpose is the big why. And we talked about purpose, maybe episode 3 of the podcast, 3 or 4. Purpose is your big why. And then the question here to ask is have I mistaken like longevity or endurance for alignment? So that's a couple of things to ponder with the administrator. And the other archetype I want to talk about is the mystic. And the mystic shadow theme is isolation, escapism, spiritual bypassing. And this is the archetype of I'm spiritually wealthy. And some of us actually are wired up more around material wealth and more around spiritual wealth. And and when I say wired up, I mean that's how it's encoded in your chart, in your soul blueprint. But that doesn't mean we can't have both, no matter what is the predominant encoding for you. My chart is more wired around spiritual prosperity, spiritual abundance, spiritual wealth, and I've created a lot of material wealth too. And that's part of what I've come here to learn about. So it's all, it's all possible for us. So the mystic knows there's more beyond the plan, the program, or the platform. But when untethered, this archetype can drift into disconnection. You can feel isolated with the mystic. And the key is to let your deeper knowing really guide you, not pull you away from life, but into the deeper truth of it. So we want to use that depth, that intuition, what you're realizing, and then bring it forward instead of just staying inward with it. And the mystic and the magician will be moving soon into Aquarius and Leo, mystic into Leo. I'll be talking about that in an upcoming episode soon. And that'll be at the end of the month. So the high value activation here is trusting your knowing, even if it's not clear yet what's next. Just really trusting the knowing, because trusting the inner knowing, trusting the intuition, like we talked about earlier, the compass, trusting that is the first step. Because if you trust it, then you are going to be open to the guidance that you are being given by it. Even if it's not clear what is next, just trusting it and going, okay, hey, I have a gift that's emerging. Okay, oh, that structure isn't working for me. I have an intuition that there is a better way. Now we don't have to fret about, okay, well, what is the better way? Just the first step is trusting that. When you trust that, then you're opening the door to what's next. And we want to make time to listen to that inner truth and to ask, what truth have I been sensing, but maybe avoiding because it might mean change? The mystic and the magician always mean change. And sometimes we sidestep the truth that's coming through, the next step that's coming through for us, because we are afraid of change. Now, you get to choose your rate of change. Mm, And what I mean by that, well, you might say, hey, but that just happened. Usually, there are things that just happen. And there are things also that we haven't made choices about, or we're just kind of holding off. It's like ripping the band aid off slowly. We just don't want to do it all at once. We're afraid of how fast things could change. And at the same time, don't judge your rate of change. Just be open to how things unfold and how you're ready to have things unfold. It doesn't have to happen overnight. The key here is being open. So if what you've built no longer feels like home, or if your systems feel heavy and your soul keeps whispering that there's more, remember, you are not broken. You're being called forward. And you don't have to figure it all out alone. And if you're feeling the pull to realign with your truth and lead from your next level, I invite you to explore booking a private Vedic astrology reading with me to reconnect with your soul's blueprint and your wealth code and the timing and what's unfolding for you and the gifts that want to come forward. So if today's conversation is resonating and you're feeling that stir of your next evolution, remember, you don't have to walk it alone. So the link to book a reading with me, you'll find with the show. But I also want to remind you that inside Sacred Wealth Mastery, we activate your unique wealth blueprint, including giving you a reading. And that's the design for aligned leadership and visibility and prosperity pathways your soul is ready for. Not about more strategies, but it's about trusting your sacred design and expanding into the business, the wealth, the leadership, the soul work that already lives within you, and aligning with a strategy that feels aligned for you. So again, you'll find the link down below. If you want to have an invite to Sacred Wealth Mastery, just email me and let me know, invite, or say Sacred Wealth Mastery, and I'll get you the invitation and we can see if that's the next best step for you. Okay, so we're going to do an integration process and then I'll finish us up with a card reading. So I want to invite you, we're going to just take a quiet moment. If you can close your eyes, I want to invite you to do that. If you're driving, of course, don't close your eyes. And you may want to write something down as something comes up for you. Remember, if you're listening this and watching this, you're not on the live version, then you can always pause this and take more time to discover more of what's coming up and work at your own timing here. So I want to invite you to close your eyes, to put your hand on your heart, to take some long, deep, full breaths. The breath will always bring us present. Breathing all the way down into your heart, letting go of your breath, letting your shoulders drop away from your ears, letting yourself land into what you're sitting or standing on. And let's just take a moment to tune in what's real for you right now. We're going to drop the mind down into the heart. This is my soul wisdom process. I have a meditation built around this. And you can just take that beautiful, brilliant mind of yours. That's a busy mind, like most are, and let it slide down a beautiful slide or down a stairway from your head to your heart, all the way down into the very center of your heart. And then take a deep breath in and out through your heart. We're going to drop a couple questions into your heart. Your soul will answer. Where in your soul work, your business, your visibility, or your expression are you still operating from an outdated version of success? Where in your soul work, your business, we're asking your heart to just really tell you the truth here. your visibility, your expression? Are you still operating from an outdated version of success? And just notice where that is. No judgment whatsoever. Like, oh, okay, good information to have. When we tell ourselves the truth, then we've got information we can work with. We'll drop the second question in. What feels more true? And maybe even scary or unfamiliar, what feels more true? What would feel more true for you to step into that would feel more like success for you? Is it maybe allowing a gift to come forward like it was for me at that time? Is it simply to let go of something? Is it time for a major recalibration, a major realignment or shift? If you don't have to be concerned about all the mechanics of it and just allow yourself to feel what feels more true for you, breathe that in. And in that feeling of more true, let's name that feeling so we can come back to the conscious creation principle. Name that feeling. Does it give you just more expansion? Is it a sense of freedom, more flow? Does it make you feel more on purpose, maybe more peaceful? It could be just more passionate. Whatever that feeling is, that would be a thing to write down. That would be something to write down and to calibrate, to feel regularly, to make that part of your day, the morning and the evening. Like, really, when you come to your work, like, okay, this is the feeling. And what can I create from here? And how can I recalibrate from here? So just take a deep, full breath with that. And if that's resonant for you, work with that over the next few days, the next few weeks. I'd love to hear what comes up for you. All right, we're going to take a moment and do a card pull here from the Sacred Wealth Code Oracle deck. You know, the deck, the journal, the book, your Sacred Wealth Code, Unlock Your Soul Blueprint for Purpose and Prosperity. Those are all available on my website. They're also available on Amazon. And they're super user friendly, and there's free tools that go along with all of them to help you deepen the practice. All right, so if you have a particular question or you want to hold what's come up for you today and get some deeper guidance on it, or just sit back and be open to what comes through here in this reading. All right. Oh, lovely. Okay. We've got our cards here. All right, beautiful. Our first card is the leader, and the leader is ruled by the sun, and it's I lead from the heart. I'm talking to conscious leaders here, so it's no wonder this has come up. The sun is also exalted right now. But what's coming through with the leader and the message here really coming through is just like we did that process, that is leading from the heart. When we're allowing that inner compass we talked about and how we're feeling, allowing that to really allow your heart to lead the way. A lot of times the head wants to lead the way in leadership. And when our head is leading the way, we tend to be looking outside of ourselves. But the guidance here is to make sure that you're dropping in, that you're allowing your heart to pull you forward. And whatever it is that you are leading, and we're all leading something, first and foremost ourselves. And then there is a difference that all of us are leading, no matter what your position is, that you're tuning in and leading from the heart, because there's also, I'm just here to remind you and seeing that there is that tendency to lead from the head and what should be, what has been, and what maybe is supposed to be. But instead, again, lead from the heart. And to do that, you have to open up your heart. So even just the simple practice of 3 breaths through the heart, tuning into your heart like we did, and see how you're being called to lead today. Great practice. The next card that came through was the Great Nurturer. And this is I give and receive nourishment. This is one of the moon's archetypes. And so we've got the luminaries here, the sun and the moon. At some level, the queen is also one of the archetypes of the moon. And the moon and the great nurturer is that part of ourselves that is connected to actually really nourishing. And nourishment is really about giving something, giving yourself first and foremost. I'm hearing to remind you, giving something, give yourself what it is that you really need to grow. And this great nurturer is coming through with guidance for you personally. Like, what do you need to give yourself so that you can grow into this next level that's wanting to come through you? This next level of your definition of success, or what's wanting to emerge. There's something in particular you need to give yourself as nourishment. Some of the things I'm tuning in and hearing for the collective here is time. And that may show up as like, oh, a few minutes a day of tuning in, or maybe a little bit more time around something that maybe needs to be recalibrated in your work. But giving yourself the nourishment of time. And also, there's another energy coming in here of, it's a feminine energy of leaning back so that you can find your flow again. The masculine energy of sort of moving and pushing forward, that's great. We need that sometimes. This is that feminine energy of more receivership, the nourishment in receiving and leaning back so that you can find your flow, because there's been a little bit of too much strategy and pushing forward. So that's some of the energy with the great nurturer coming through. And then the advocate came through. And the advocate is one of Saturn's cards. And the advocate here is, I align with the greater good for all. And there's an interesting message coming through with the advocate. And this message has to do with essentially that aligning with the greater good for all. It's coming back and pushing you back to purpose. What are you here to really align with that is for the greater good? Now, whatever's good for you is good for everyone, whether they know it or not. So, one of the things that's really coming through is that some of you have a situation going on where you may be doing things in your work, your business, and even in relationships that seem like it's good for the other one, but it's not feeling really good for you. And therefore, you are not aligned with the greater good for all, because you are actually part of the all. So, what's coming through here is for you to be more nurturing of yourself, that better advocate for yourself, and for you to recalibrate on, okay, what is it that I'm really taking a stand for that is the greater good here? So, whatever the situation is, whether it's a relationship, whether it is a something that the way you're working with customers or clients, or something in your business, or even your soul work, what is the greater good of you being fully invested in that? And if how that structure is, or that strategy is, now to bring it back to our subject today, that's creating that so-called success, is really not aligned for the greater good for all, because it's not aligned with where you're going, who you're emerging to, or it's just not aligned with you personally, and then I want to invite you to recalibrate that. And but to recalibrate that, you want to sit with, okay, how could I, what do I need to be aware of? And what do I need to shift in order to be more in alignment with the greater good for all in this? For all, including me. I actually want you to put that, including me, because some of you are doing things that feel like they're good for everybody else. And that feels like the greater good for all, and they're not good for you. You've got to be included in the equation. And because you're emerging and you're becoming, then things have got to be able to shift and move differently so that you're included in who you are now and who you're becoming. We're on an evolutionary journey. I want to thank you for being with me today. If this information has spoken to you in any way, I appreciate you sharing and subscribing. I always love to hear you. So email me, ask your questions or anything topics you want me to cover. And, remember, you're allowed to want more. You're allowed to evolve out of what no longer fits, and you're not alone in that. And if you're feeling this shift, I'd love to support you in a private Vedic astrology reading. And you can find that link here with the show. Also, I will be bringing a workshop forward for you very soon. It's called Soul Over Strategy Unlock True Prosperity by Leading from Within. And you will find that link with the show notes. And if you don't, for some reason, that link is coming very soon, or you can also email me. So, again, I want to thank you so much for being with me. And I look forward to being with you next week.